Welcome back, my favorite Python programmers, to a brand new video, and in this one we're going to be delving another time into dictionaries because, as I've told you, it's very important to know your dictionaries, and I keep getting questions from my students, and I want to make sure that all of these dictionary questions are handled. And speaking of handling, in this exercise that we're going to be doing today, we're going to be doing dictionary key value handling. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a mental screenshot or pause the video and try to do this on your own and then compare the results with what I produce. So let's look at what we have today. You'll need to write a function, SmallValue, that takes as argument a dictionary and returns the key that has the smallest value. All the values will be numbers, of course, because, well, other than that, it will be a bit difficult. So for example, right here, we have small values. This is the function that's being called. And you always have to be careful of the words inside of my exercises. It returns DCA. So what I want you to do is this function should actually return the key that has the smallest value. So for example, right here, we have JFK, DCA, IAD, and we have 4, 2, and 1. That means IAD should be returned out of these. Now, this, for some of you, you're like, hey, that's super simple. But what I want you to do is I want you to take close look at the node, because you cannot use special functions like sum, min, and max, only loops and if conditions. This makes it slightly harder for those astute students of you. This shouldn't be a problem. What I want you to do is I want you to pause the video and I want you to do this on your own. Okay, so first things first is we need to define the small value function. And this function takes in a dictionary, so I'll call it my dict. And whenever we're going through and trying to find the smallest or biggest value or whatever, it's always a good first step to actually create the minimum key and set it as none. Now, we want to be comparing the values at each point. Let's first of all, I'm not gonna get too ahead of myself, because I know some of you haven't encountered this too much, but I'm going to take you through the process of thinking about it. So I want to go through each key and value in my dictionary, and it's very important that I go through the key and the value. So I'm going to say for key, comma, value in my dictionary dot items. And it does not show up because it's not sure if my dictionary is going to, or my dict is a dictionary. Now what the dot item does, let me see if it gives me any documentation. And it is refusing to give me any documentation, but basically what it does is it returns a tuple, and that tuple contains the key and the value. And that's why we have two temporary variables in here, the key and the value both being unpacked by the dot items. Now inside, what we want to do is we want to check this value. Is it smaller than the smallest value? And this is where things get a bit hard. How do I compare it with the first one? Now, there are many different ways of going about it. Some people like to get the first value in your dictionary and then compare it with all the other values. What I like to do is I would like to create the minimum value right here, and I, instead of setting it to like 9,000 or whatever, some big number, keep in mind you cannot set it to none and you cannot set it to 0. Why? Because, well, maybe you have negative values in your dictionary, so that is not possible. But what I like to do, because in here what I will do is I'm going, and keep in mind this is not permanent, I'm going to say if the value is smaller or less than the minimum value. And if it is, then I'm going to set the minimum key to my actual key, and then the minimum value to my value. That way, for example, if I encounter, where's my example? Let's say we start off with some kind of minimum value, which I want you to think about what could that potential minimum value be when we start off. So for example, let's say whatever it was, then we get to 5, right? So 5 would be smaller than the minimum value. You should be thinking about what that minimum value is going to be. So if I get 5, it's smaller, then the minimum key is going to become JFK, and the minimum value is going to be equal to the value, which is 5. But then I encounter DCA, which has a minimum value, which has a value of 2, which is smaller than the current minimum value that we've set, which was 5 on JFK. So, and that's how we proceed, and that's how we get the minimum key. But the question is, what should the minimum value be? Well, if you're thinking it should be some huge number, then you are correct, because we want it to be something big. And you might be thinking like, yeah, maybe I will write some number like this. And it's a valid thinking point, because yes, but what if you have a dictionary that has an even greater number than this one? Your best bet is to actually use the following. And if you haven't seen this before, this is something that's very common whenever you're trying to compare two things. If you're trying to find the smallest value, set the minimum value to be infinity. This basically returns infinity. So right here we have float, and inside we have this string infinite, and this is how you create an infinite number, a huge, massive number. And whatever you encounter, the value is always going to be smaller than the initial minimum value, which is infinity. That way you guarantee that first minimum value is going to be right here. All right, this is how it basically works. Final step is we need to return the minimum key, because remember, that's what our exercise told us that it wanted. And I actually have the two examples right here. Of course, we will be printing them out because otherwise nothing is going to happen. So right here we should have DCA, and right here we should have IAD. And if I right click and I run, I get DCA and IAD. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm trying to keep these videos bite-sized exercises, right? I don't want to, because I'm starting to upload 3 times a week, and which takes a lot more out of me, and at the same time I can feel that the views are like different based on the amount of time. I'm going to play around, see what works, see what doesn't. If you have any recommendations or comments about the video, or any questions about what we've done in this video and how we figured out how to get these values, and if you're a bit also confused about the infinity, I completely understand. Whenever I found this float infinite, I was like, what's that? And whenever one of my students sees that, they're also like, something is weird here. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. My dictionary.items, very important function that you'll encounter. If you want to challenge yourself, I recommend that you try to recreate the small values, but this time you're allowed to use the minimum and the maximum, and try to see how to do that using dictionaries. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye for now.